Hello guys, thanks for joining this session. In this session, we are going to learn about PowerShell Remoting. PowerShell Remoting is one of the important topics. So let's look into the topic. What are the topics we are going to discuss over here? In this session, we are going to discuss about what is PowerShell Remoting, why do we need it, what is the security concern, how do we enable WinRM, that is for remoting. Then we will directly jump into the exercises where we will perform these exercises, and with the help of these exercises we will learn about how to invoke command to the remote machine, and then we will also learn about sessions within PowerShell Remoting. So let's start our discussion now. But prior to starting our formal discussion, I wanted to ask you one question over here. Suppose you are working for a growing business or say growing company as a system admin, and currently you are managing only a single server for that company. So to maintain the server, the task is really very easy for you because you are managing a single server where you need to perform maintenance activities on a single server. Now suppose your company grows and the employee and the client of the company is also grown. Due to that, the number of servers is also get increased. Now the number of server is 10. Now you tell me how you are going to manage 10 server together, and you are the only sysadmin whose responsibility is to maintain these 10 servers. So you can imagine that suppose any patch update came for an operating system, then you need to manually log in into each of the server and do the patch installation. Isn't it really good if we have a mechanism by which we can connect programmatically through each of the server and run the patches? Yes, this is where PowerShell Remoting come into picture. So PowerShell Remoting enable us to access remote machine across a network and retrieve data or execute code on one or many remote computers. Here I wanted to tell you one thing. Accessing remote computer is not a new thing. We were accessing the remote computer earlier as well, but the protocol which we were using was different, and that is not very efficient. Earlier we were using remote procedure call, that is RPC, for remote interaction, and the problem with that is it has many different ports and it is really very hard to configure on a firewall. So slowly Microsoft is also moving away from RPC, that is remote procedure call. So you must be wondering, or you must be asking, how this magic is happening now. So this is our next point of discussion, that is architecture of PowerShell Remoting. So to make you understand the architecture of PowerShell Remoting, I wanted to show you one diagram and then we will do the discussion there. So this is the current architecture of PowerShell Remoting. If you closely look into the diagram, then you will find that at the bottom of the figure is your computer, or more properly you can say your client. This is where you physically sit and where you will initiate most of your remoting activities. Now there is a big arrow that is called WSMAN. Your computer will communicate via WSMAN protocol. This is an HTTP and HTTPS based protocol that can encapsulate a variety of different communications. Now on the remote computer, that is server, Windows Remote Management Service runs. This service is configured to have one or more listeners. Each listeners wait for incoming WSMAN traffic on a specific port which is bound to a specific protocol, that is HTTP or HTTPS, and on a specific IP addresses. WinRM uses HTTP port 5985 and HTTPS uses 5986. It doesn't use port 80 or 443 so that it will be not conflicting with other application. After that, when a listener receives traffic, the WinRM service looks to see which endpoint the traffic is meant for. For our purposes, an endpoint will usually be launching an instance of Windows PowerShell. In PowerShell term, an endpoint is also called a session configuration. This is because in addition to launching PowerShell, it can auto-load scripts and modules, place restriction upon what can be done by the connecting user, and apply additional session-specific settings not mentioned here. So this is the way by which PowerShell Remoting will work. So now moving further, now we understand that architecture of PowerShell Remoting So far, whatever the discussion which we had, now you can easily answer this question, why do we need PowerShell remote? Yes, exactly. PowerShell remoting enables us to access remote machines so that we can execute code on one or many remote computers. We will see all this in demo. Now enough of talk now. Let's jump into the PowerShell scripting editor where we will learn about how to enable remoting and perform the demo exercises to learn about invoke command, remote sessions along with other aspects of PowerShell remoting. So we are into Windows integrated scripting editor now. But prior to starting our demo, I just wanted to tell you about the setup of the machines for this demo. So for this demo, I am using two computers. One is my host machine and another one is virtual server. My host machine is having Windows 10 Enterprise Edition and the virtual server is having Windows Server 2012 R2 data center. So we will be performing all the exercises on this setup. So how do we enable remoting within the machine? By default, it is enabled for Windows Server 2012. So it is enabled for this machine. But if it is not enabled, then we need to use a commandlet called enable-ps remoting. So just run the command enable ps remoting, run it and then press yes over here. So here, that's what it is telling, that it is already being enabled for this machine. So it is asking over here that selected user remotely run Windows PowerShell command on this computer. So we will tell that yes over here so that we can pass the command to this machine from the host machine. Now it is again asking for other type of operation, that is PowerShell.workflow. So for this also we can mention yes, you can limit that as well. It will again ask, and this time for PowerShell 32. So we can tell yes, and this time it is asking for Windows .server manager workflows, just mark it yes. So that's it. So it is being enabled. Now we will go back to the host machine and from there we will send the command which will run into this machine. But wait a minute, how do my host machine recognize this or say trust this machine? So we must have to build a trust within the host machine. So let's grab the IP for that, so that we will use this IP and we will build the trust. So clear it first and then run IP config. So it has given us this IP. Let's grab this one, just write it down or copy it, and let's go back to the host machine to do the configuration. To prove you the point, without building the trust, you can't execute any command to the remote machine. So let's try to execute a program which will get the event log from the remote machine. Let's write it. So we will do this with the help of command called invoke command, and here we need to specify the computer name, and the computer name is the IP which we have grabbed. So paste that IP, and then afterwards we need to execute something called script block, and then we will run the command, and here we will pass this command to get the event log. So that will fetch the event information, whatever the event occurred for security. We are going to use the security, and then we will select the first 10. So select object, and here we need to specify first 10. So this command will run and give us a top 10 event log for security. So let's run it. This failed. Why? Because WS-MAN protocol doesn't trust this IP. So we must have to build the trust between host and remote computer to execute any of the script or say code to the remote computer from the host computer. So let's do it now. To build the trust, we need to write following command. But prior to setting up the trust, I wanted to introduce one concept of PowerShell, that is PS drive. PowerShell has various logical drive. If you will type get-ps drive, then it will give you various type of drives, which it is being listed over here. Within that, we have a drive called WS-MAN. So basically this drive, what it has, let's look into that. So to check what it has, we need to write ls WS-MAN and colon and enter. So it return a local host. So this is a location. You can try this one. So now you can list like this local host, and what it contains, check into that. So it has contained these information. So here we need to go into the client. So what it contains there, So it has contained something called trusted hosts. So let's look into that, what it has. Trusted hosts. So here the trusted host value is nothing. So this is the place where we need to make an entry for remote machine. So how we can do that? We can use a commandlet called set item, and then we need to specify the PS drive and which location, localhost, client, trusted host, and the value which we want to pass is the IP. And the IP, I need to copied it and paste it. Now here we need to specify the IP, and now press enter. It's telling yes. Now check that whether this value came or not. We don't need to go with like this. We can directly use get item and the location of this one. So let's copy it, paste it over here and run. So now, and in now to execute the command which we have tried earlier, but it throws an error. So let's try to run that command as well. So this command we have ran earlier and it throws error. Now try to execute it now. It failed again. Why? Because we trusted the remote computer to the host, but on which credential this command will execute on remote machine. So to make it working, we need to pass the credential as well. So to pass the credential, we need to create an object of get credential. So cred equal to get credential, and now run it. So it will ask for credential information. We need to specify PS training, the domain name. This is the domain name, and here we need to specify administrator. This is the account which will execute the command, and here we need to specify the password. Now okay, now pass this credential with the command. So here we need to specify there is something called credential, and we need to pass this object. Now try to run it. So it has given us the top 10 log event for security from the remote machine. Now we can easily perform all these exercises. So let's do it one by one. So in the first example, we have used the same thing to make it more understandable. So let's do some changes into the command which we have executed. So let's look into the command, what the command which we have written. If you are looking into this, then you will find that we are using a commandlet called invoke command that is being used to run the command within remote machine, and then we are specifying the computer name. Here we are specifying the IP, and then we are passing the credential and the script block which we want to run. So this is the solution for exercise 3. So how it is being solution, first I will describe the problem, what the problem we were having. So if you will remove this curly braces and from here and put it over here, so it will change the entire meaning of the command. So it is telling invoke command will go to this machine with this credential, and it will execute the event log whichever is having security and get all the data to this machine. The data will come to the host machine, and then it will filter it the top 10. So this is the problem which is actually exercise 2, and if you will run it, then it will take so much of time. So see here, it is still executing and it haven't returned back over here, so it is still running. One thing you notice over here that the connection is being interrupted. PowerShell actually give you flexibility to connect to the interrupted connection till 4 minutes. So that means it will keep trying till 4 minutes for making the, or say for establishing the connection. So you understand that what is the problem. So that is actually describing the exercise 2. So that means the execution time is really high. So how we can resolve it? Execute this set of command to the remote machine, and we will get the output, that is top 10 records. So let's run it. So see here how quick it was. It returned the top 10 record very quickly compared to what we have executed earlier. Why is it so? Because we are getting only the data back and all the execution happened to the remote machine. Why is it so? Because the communication which is happening within the machines is happening with the help of serialization and deserialization, which is in XML form. So that means data is serialized into XML when sent back, then deserialized back to the object in the local session. So moving to the exercise 4. So how do we can get all the process which is running on the remote computer? So it is pretty much straightforward. We will use again the invoke command, and this time what we are going to do, so we need to write another commandlet called get process and execute it. So it has given all the processes details which is running on remote machine. Now moving to the exercise 5. So how do you come to know that how much time a command is taking while executing? For example, how much time our earlier exercise command has taken for execution. So to know that, we can use, there is a commandlet called measure command and then we will run it. So let's do it, run it. So it will return the execution time information. This is really very handy when you are working with production environment. Now let's proceed further and discuss about PS session. But prior to learning PS session or say sessions in PowerShell, we have to understand that what is the problem with invoke command. So to understand the problem of invoke command, I will write a invoke command statement so that I will make you understand what is the problem with invoke command. So let me write that, better leverage the earlier statement. And here what we will do, we can remove everything. Instead of a script block, here we will assign a variable. So let's do it equal to 100. Let's remove this measure command. Now run it. So it executed. Now if I will run this one, so you must be thinking that it will return vary value to us. Let's run it. So it haven't returned that value. Why? Because invoke command opens the connection or say open the session and execute the command, and once finish the execution it will close the session. So that means if you try to access the variable information which you have used in the earlier execution, that it doesn't retain. So this is the problem of invoke command. So how do we can resolve this issue? So to resolve this issue, here the PS session comes into the picture. So let's create a PS session. We will create the PS session with the help of new-PS session commandlet. So let's do it. We will create a variable called session, and here we will specify a commandlet called PS session, and then we will need to specify the computer name. So we will take this entirely and paste it over here. Now press enter and this will create a session variable and we will use with invoke command. So let's write it again. So we will write it invoke, and then we need to specify session, and here we need to specify the variable which we have created for session, session, and then we need to pass again. We have created vary equal to 100. Let's run it. Now check that whether it is retaining the value or not. Just remove it, run again. So see here it is returning 100. So that means it is resolving the issue which we have faced with invoke command, and we can resolve it with the session which we have created with PS session. And the session variable is not limited to executing the command. We can even import the module which is not existing within the host machine. For example, our host machine doesn't have Active Directory installed over here. So if you try to run like import module and then you want to add Active Directory, then it will throw error because it is not installed there. But our virtual machine is a domain controller machine and it has the Active Directory, and if you will pass the session, then it will have the capability to import the module of Active Directory. So let's look into that, how we can do that. Import module, we can use the same, and this time we will pass the session variable PS session and the variable which we have created session. Let's run it. It is executing. See here it is loading Active Directory module, so getting all the commands. So it has included Active Directory module. Let's confirm it. So get modules, get module, enter. See here, so it has included Active Directory. Now let's look into the commands of these module. What are the commands available? Get command. Now module, Active Directory. Run it. So it has given all the command which need to work with Active Directory. See here. So let's try to execute some command. Try to get AD user. So let's get AD user. We will filter all and get member. Run it. Throws error. Sorry for that. There is an issue. So we need to run again. So it has given us method information. What are the method being available within this commandlet get-ad user? So we have all these method which is being available within these commandlet. One thing you notice here, I told you that whenever we are executing, so it is using XML serialization where the data is being serialized when it is being sent, and when the output is coming, it is being deserialized. How it is confirming? So see here, it is mentioned that deserialize.microsoft.activedirectory.management.ad user. So it is a returned information from the virtual server or remote server where we are executing this command. Now let's do something interesting. If you remember that we have performed the exercises in the earlier session where we were using a user info CSV file that contains the information about users and their email. The same exercise we have followed in the function session, dot sourcing session, as well as the module session. So we will use the same exercise and take it forward with remoting session as well. And here this time we will use the module which we have designed in our previous session to read the CSV file for users, and then we will create those users in the Active Directory within domain controller machine. Let's do that exercise. So we have designed a module called read CSV in our earlier session. Let's import that. Import module, and here we need to call read CSV, which we have created in our earlier session. Now use the method which we have created. So for that we will create a variable called CSV data, and here we will use the function which we have created. If you remember, that is our MUDF user info, and here we need to pass the CSV file information that is coming from .sourcing demo, and it contains this user info.csv. Let's run it. Now if we will see that CSV data, then we have users name and email. Now we will create all these users in Active Directory of domain controller. So let's do it now. So how we can do that? Call the same thing which we have done earlier. So let's write the code block. Let's copy this one, paste it over here, and we will write here only. So let's write the complete script which we have already done this one. So let's include this one, Control V, and this is the CSV data. Just Control C and Control V. Now we need to write the script. So here what we need to do, we need to iterate the CSV data and create the new AD user. So to do that we will use for each loop, and here we will read the user and from CSV data, and then commandlet called new AD user, and from here we will get the user, that is user's name, which we are having this column. So we will iterate that, and there is other parameter which we need to pass, that is other attributes, and here we will pass the mail which is our $user.email. So this will create users within Active Directory. So let's run it, just save it, let's run it, see what it is doing, execute it. So it is running, it's done the execution. So let's look into that whether it has created a user or not. So to do that we again need to use this session, copy it, and here we specify get AD user and execute it. We need to specify all. It haven't created the user, so I got the error. What is happening over here? We are entering into a session and we are trying to access the variable which is within the local host, within this host computer, which it is not recognizing that. That's the reason it is telling that it is an empty value. So how we can fix that? So first of all we need to get rid of this thing, this session, and instead we will use computer name, and here we need to pass the IP of that computer. So let's copy it, and then we need to specify the credential. So let's get the object credential, and then here to pass the local variable to the remote session we use an automatic variable called args. This is a automatic variable within PowerShell. So how we can pass the value within it? So we will pass it with argument list, and here we need to specify CSV data, which actually contains the value of the CSV file, and now we need to iterate it. Let's also bring back the properties which we have removed earlier. So here now try to execute it and let's see whether it is creating users or not. So let's do it, let's run it. So now it executed it. So let's look into that whether it created the AD user or not. So let's run it, pass the all filter. So here if you will check here, it has created user Johnny, which was in Mohandi, Max, Sammy, Elvis within our Active Directory. So if you will run this one CSV data, then you will find Elvis, Sammy, Max, Mohandi, Johnny. Same you are getting over here, Johnny, Mohandi, Max, Sammy and Elvis. So see how beautiful it is. You can automate anything with the help of remoting. So this is what I wanted to demonstrate in this remoting session. I hope you enjoyed the session. So I am stopping the session over here. See you in the next session. Till then, bye bye. Take care.